You're too late, Spider-Man! Weed has been legalized!
But you're the one getting smoked, Gummy!
How's it going, everyone? Today's the day. Spider-Man No Way Home, the movie that Marvel fans, Spider-Man fans have been looking forward to pretty much as hardcore as people were for Infinity War and Endgame, it seems. Way to go on Sony for creating this hype machine film that really had little marketing to it until a few months ago. Like, that's pretty fucking awesome that they just kind of trusted that the audience would carry the marketing for the movie themselves. And I really like Tom Holland. I know he gets a lot of flack on Twitter, but he kind of really captures the childlike nature of a kid, Peter Parker, and I'm really excited to see him thrown into this situation, because that's something I appreciate about the MCU films. I really like Homecoming. I think it's a well-written teen flick just on its own, and it's got one of the best, twist reveals, like in a superhero movie when he goes to pick up Liz for Homecoming. It's one of my favorite Spider-Man movie moments of all time. Far From Home's a good movie. I'd say, it's a step backwards from Homecoming as far as being like a craft of a movie. But I think, Mysterio is pretty fucking awesome. I think, the first half, it sets up the bait and switch, which, everyone pretty much sees that there's something going on. But I think, the way it's told, the payoff is earned, but the first half suffers nonetheless.
So my first kind of foray into the Spider-Man world was definitely with the Raimi films. And then, from there I started getting into the games a little bit more. Back when movie tie-in games actually didn't suck.
Right, yeah.
Because I watched that, or, played a bunch of those. Crazy to think how far Activision has fallen since then. And then, of course, the Ultimate Spider-Man game. I actually never really watched the Amazing Spider-Man films until well after they had already released. I didn't hate them, but I certainly, I don't find any reason to keep going back to them either. And then, of course, this most recent game, which I think is just the best video game iteration of Spider-Man I'd ever seen, and Into the Spider-Verse.
You mean Spider-Man PS4, not Miles Morales?
Yeah, Spider-Man PS4. And then, of course, watch both the John Watts Spider-Man, the MCU Spider-Man, whatever you want to call it. Either way's correct. Got into those finally, and here we are.
To return to something I did before with that kind of history, but there's a spin on it, and that appealed to me.
Alfred?
For me, it's just about the money.
Hey guys, don't you want to know my history with the Spider-Man franchise?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, let's go. What do you think of your nachos, Tierig?
I'm excited. They asked if I wanted jalapenos. I don't do spicy, so...
It's a fancy fucking movie theater.
Clearly.
It's a quality cup of cheese.
Straight from Taco Bell.
That's a compliment. Well.
So, Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah. A movie that we absolutely have no chance in hell talking about without spoiling a single thing.
We cannot stress this enough. There is a lot that happens in this movie. There are some very succinct things we can say without getting into spoilers, but that is maybe 5 minutes of conversation, and that's it.
Right. It's very much it's pure world building, It's it takes the assumption that you've seen everything up to this point, up until Far From Home at the very least, and it shows you how it's about to expand beyond that. It doesn't apologize if you haven't seen everything beforehand.
There's no hand holding in this movie. Which is kind of rare for the MCU. Ultimately, I think it does a good job at what it tries to be.
Right.
You know, John Watts returns for the third Spider-Man film, and you know, to his credit, he does. You know, he's done a successful trilogy so far, which is like a actually, like, and when I say successful, I mean I've enjoyed all three films trilogy, which no Spider-Man director has been able to do yet. Much, no disrespect to Sam Raimi.
Right, his hands were a little tied with the studio, and Mark Webb didn't get a chance. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to think that we actually have like a consistently good trilogy for Spider-Man now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not to say that it's like a perfect trilogy, but every film is worthwhile. You know, there's not like a substantially weak one of the trilogy. All of them are just kind of a consistently good story arc for Peter Parker. Which I'll say right now, I think Tom Holland gives the best performance as Spider-Man and Peter Parker of his whole MCU career in this movie.
Oh yeah.
It was very, very good stuff.
This was very much a film that dives really deep into why Spider-Man or why Peter Parker cannot live this double life.
I agree. I'd say it's better paced than Far From Home, which, you know, kind of had like that first half of setup to the bait and switch, which it just had to get through. Overall, this movie's better paced, but I'd say Far From Home had the better climax, if you ask me. It had, you know, the stakes where they needed to be. And this movie kind of tries to get to those stakes, but I don't think it quite gets to that level of threat.
You mentioned earlier about the pacing in Far From Home. I mean, for the most part, it's pretty good, but the beginning just felt way too rushed because...
In No Way Home.
And especially No Way Home.
Yeah.
It passes through a big... Feels like they introduced this as this big subplot, and it kind of goes away quickly, and that feels like it should have been bigger, and it was kind of...
What I did like about this movie is that it showed a lot more of, like, Peter just swinging around New York.
Yeah, there's one shot, I don't remember where it was in the movie, but like it looked like he was swinging from nothing. But other than that, no, it was very good showcase of like his web abilities.
In terms of the action, I think that, you know, while this, you know, like we talked about earlier privately, this doesn't have anything as flashy as some of the other movies have had, but I do think it's got some of the most consistently good action I've ever seen in a Spider-Man film.
I get what you mean. For me, it was pretty gripping. They were just very elongated, you know, pretty to look at action sequences, and they were well made. I just wouldn't say that there was a single one that like really stood out to me as being like one of the best Spider-Man pieces of action filmed. You know, there wasn't anything that really rivaled, like, you know, say the train sequence in Spider-Man 2, or I really, really enjoy the Mysterio illusionary magic sequences in Far From Home. In The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I like the first time he's faced with Electro when it slows down.
Yeah.
You know, you see all the decisions he has to make, you know, his web shooter going out, people grabbing the electric handrail that they're about to die from. There wasn't anything that I felt like was that, like, you know, hey, that's what I take away from this movie. All of it was just kind of about the performances and the kind of story it tells, rather than those set pieces and everything.
Which I think that, you know, is the kind of movie it should have been. I think that this was... I think that this needed to be like a... And it was, to an extent, a kind of almost grittier Spider-Man, while still having a lot of the heart that the MCU films have had so far. It's very much an emotionally heavy film. it's just as much a drama as it is a superhero film.
Yeah,
And a character exploration of Peter as well.
I'm glad that, like, you know, Disney didn't shy away from showing Peter in this angle. Because I could see, you know, in light of other superhero stories, that they would really not want a story like this to be told. But to me, it was very engaging, and it really added a lot of depth to Peter in this universe. And I'm very excited to see where it goes from there.
The only character I really dislike still
Yeah.
is good old Flash Thompson. Well, he still sucks, and honestly, it seems like most of the unfunny moments in the film come from him specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, in general, the humor, you know, typically, you know, is that marvelly hit or miss humor. I wouldn't say it drew me out of it. It didn't undercut any drama, I'd say. As far as it just being a film and of its craft, it's pretty good. You know, it's a pretty well made film. It's got great characterizations of the villains that are in it. It's got wonderful performances from all the supporting cast, and I think you should see it. You know, I know you're already gonna go see it. You probably already got fucked out of getting tickets if you wanted to see it, but we're dawdling. But just be wary of spoilers. But
Yeah, by the time we walked into the theater, or like by the day before we had walked into the theater, I had like 32 different things muted on Twitter, all to prevent myself from seeing anything.
yeah,
And it worked. It worked for me.
I feel like it's going to be very hard to avoid this movie. Avoid the spoilers, at least.
Yeah,
Right, that's
like
the-
endgame
it's-
levels of difficult.
I'd
Yeah,
say
it's
this
up
is this is gonna be one of the hardest movies to try and go into blind, because people are dicks, man, and
It's not even that people are dicks, it's just that people are dumb.
they're
True,
dumb.
that
People and then they're inconsiderate.
Yeah,
Yeah, they don't care where they
Like,
post
not
it
even
or-
intentionally inconsiderate, they're just careless.
right. Even just reactions, you know, from the premiere were like, "Come on, man!" Like,
People could easily pick up what you're saying.
Exactly.
And it's just, you're revealing too much. Just
but more power to you if you haven't had a chance to see it yet. But I think this is the point where we're gonna have to switch to spoilers. You know, so if we want to go ahead and rate this thing, I think we've covered just some basic things as far as filmmaking goes. I know maybe you wanted to talk about cinematography or something.
Yeah, I think all in all, this was a very well shot film. It felt like there was really no wasted energy in any of the camera work. It felt like every shot was doing something to add to the story. Just all in all, very well shot.
of course, I do like some of the shots as well. I mean, there's only a couple times where I had some issue with it, but
As far as like what?
as far as maybe the lighting of it,
That can be put more on post-production than the
Yeah.
camera work, though.
Yeah, I thought the lighting could have been a little better
Yeah.
at quite a few points. But I'm ready to rate this thing if you are.
Yeah, I think I am as well.
Let you guys fight over who goes first.
Eric, the honors are yours.
okay, well, I gotta say, No Way Home, you know, it's really hard to let the hype kind of impair your judgment, but I feel like this is a movie I can safely say that it's so enjoyable on its own. Like what it introduces, what it all throws in, and you should be ready for a wild time. You should be ready for a great time. A lot of it well acted, a lot of great action, a lot of decent moments, a lot of funny moments, emotional as well. And if I were to give my final rating, I'd probably give this a 4 stars.
4 stars?
4.
Wow.
Interesting. So, all in all, I would say that just beginning to end, there was you know, obviously there were a few, you know, marvelly humor moments that didn't hit quite as well, but I think the good in this film so vastly outweighs the bad, and a lot of the bad you can make of this movie is, you know, some of it's valid, but I mean, so a lot of what we're about to talk about, I mean, I know especially Carrick is going to get really nitpicky with it. And that's just because, you know, you got to find negatives in something. But this was a really good film. I got to say 3 stars.
3 stars. I thought this was a well-acted, well-made, well-directed superhero movie, and I was quite pleased with the end product. There's definitely things I thought could have been better handled, but there wasn't anything that was like so incorrect that it like really disrupted my movie-going experience. There was just some things that you look at and you can kind of laugh at, very nitpicky stuff. I just, you know, I think of where it sits to me as far as just a Marvel film. And I agree that it's a step up from Far From Home. I personally do think that Homecoming is the best of this director's trilogy of Spider-Man films. However, I am going to give it 3 stars because I think that it just has this novelty to it that, you know, it just is it's a crowd pleaser film, but not in like that very cash grabby way. Like, you know, the Disney Star Wars films tend to be, in my opinion. A lot of the moments feel very earned. That's why I think, you know, it worked so well amidst all of the minor flaws that we're about to discuss. And even then, they're very subjective flaws. You know, they could change over time. But I do think this was a film that, like, definitely was worth it. It's just, if you have anything spoiled for you, you know, that's just kind of it. You're going to look at this movie as just, you know, you see all the surprises unfolding and you're like, wow, this would have been fucking awesome to see. So I see this being a very empty experience if it's ruined. You know, the spoilers are really what it has going for it.
The spoilers are really brutal.
On that note, like, I was really considering giving it 2, but, like, maybe it's just because I haven't had it spoiled, so I don't have that perspective, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it a 3 for now. I think, you know, it's definitely worth buying brand new on Blu-ray, and it definitely has rewatch value, I'd say.
Oh, for sure. It's just so much fun, but it tells so much story at the same time.
Right, and considering how bad it could have been, you know, we've seen Spider-Man movies now fucked up a Rogues Gallery film.
Yeah.
This one was pretty good. You know, I'd still give Into the Spider-Verse my vote for the best Rogues Gallery Spidey film, but, you know, this one didn't really disappoint.
Right.
Handled it well.
It did. So on that note, we're going to transition to spoilers, so if you can see this movie, don't be dicks if you have seen it and spoil it for people, but we're going to talk about everything there is to talk about, basically.
Yep.
That we can manage to think of.
We're going to get into the fucking nitty-gritty of it here.
So who wants to kick off spoilers? I think Taylor should.
Okay.
I was very surprised you gave it 4 stars, by the way.
Yeah, that was shocking.
I was kind of thinking 3 stars, but I'm like, well, the movie made me smile a lot, so I couldn't really. The movie made me smile a lot. I have to give it 4 stars.
I think had the fan service really gotten in the way of the enjoyment, I would have rated it 2 stars.
But it really didn't. It was all earned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what's the first spoiler you want to talk about here?
Okay, well, I mean, I'm glad what the trailer did leave out.
Yeah, should we just address the elephant in the room now?
Sure, yeah.
Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are both in this film.
Yeah, everything that's been speculated besides basically Deadpool is, like, true. That's kind of the thing that irks me about this film. Like, in a weird way, I felt like I had it spoiled for me just because of all the speculation behind it. You know,
Yeah.
technically I didn't, but like, you know, seeing it unfold, it felt like it was just very predictable every time. You know, especially like the Charlie Cox cameo right off the bat, man. Like, I saw it coming a mile away as soon as like it pans to him in the apartment talking to a lawyer. I'm like, oh, that's about to be Daredevil.
It took me a second. It took me a second when Andrew Garfield showed up to realize it was him.
Really? Because like I saw his suit and I'm like, yeah, that's just flat out Andrew Garfield right there.
Yeah, when that portal was opened, it was obvious. It was either Toby or Andrew.
Well, it took me a second to register because I was like, okay, it's entirely possible. But then he did the wave, and I was like, no. After what Peter's just been through, he wouldn't wave like that, and that's when I realized. Like, Peter wouldn't be doing a cutesy little wave right now.
The reveal that was definitely the crowd pleaser was Tobey Maguire.
Oh, absolutely.
But the Andrew Garfield reveal still got a great pop. And I'm glad they revealed Toby last.
Yeah, it was very respectful, too. Like, that's what I was worried about the most. I'm very glad that of all the returning characters, theirs was handled very well. I think the villains had, you know, they were justified fine.
Yeah,
in the movie's
absolutely.
plot.
Absolutely, they did a great job of like explaining exactly where they got plucked out of their timelines.
I do think trailer 2 showed way too much. Like, it basically gave away that Toby and Andrew were going to be in it, just like without even saying it.
There's no surprises for the villains, really.
I will say the one big thing I was worried about, and it was the second poster that was released for the film. There was like a tendril of electricity leading to that like gauntlet looking thing on Peter's suit. And I was fucking mortified. I was like, if they fucking give Peter Parker Venom Strike and not save that for Miles Morales, because I want to see Venom Strike in the MCU. But I don't want to see Peter be the first one to wield it. I want it to be saved for Miles. Mm-hmm. And I still really hope that Donald Glover comes back to play the Prowler.
Right.
The what?
The Prowler.
It's a Miles villain.
Yeah, he's Miles' uncle.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's in Homecoming. He's the guy that Peter webs to the car.
Donald Glover's character, Childish Gambino.
I kind of remember. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Prowler. It's just, you know, that's a young guy.
You know, can you let me out of here? I got frozen food.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting off topic.
That sounded like it felt good.
It actually felt amazing. But yeah, this movie puts Peter Parker in a very dark position.
Yeah, it really does. This is. I think this is easily the darkest Spider-Man movie I've ever seen.
I think the darkest Spider-Man setting that I've seen, like in a TV show or film, is in it's a Wolverine like animation limited series, and it's just this dystopian ass future, and Peter Parker is just picking off like these Deathlock Prime things that are traveling back and killing superheroes in the past. He's like sniping them and stuff. He's like this grizzled, war-torn Peter Parker. And it's crazy.
Well, let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. So yeah, the film opens, you know, basically with right where Far From Home left off. You know, immediately everyone starts swarming Peter and MJ. You know, Peter grabs MJ. They zip away. Eventually, they get back to Peter's house, and Peter is trying desperately to keep Aunt May and Happy, who are going through a breakup, to figure out what's going on.
Peter Parker's interrogated him, Ned, and MJ, and it's actually pretty funny. Ned kind of just blows his fucking whole secret about being
like, how does
which, I mean, they kind of got that right. The guy was very cunning and calculated, but we don't really get like a payoff to his character, really.
Do we know who like that character is?
He's with the InfoWars Daily Bugle.
I thought he was with Damage Control.
He's with Damage Control, but he's also communicating with J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He is.
At least I'm pretty sure. I could be totally wrong about that. I'll just be upfront about that if I am wrong. After Peter's interrogated, is when we get the Daredevil reveal, but it's just Charlie Cox, you know, as
Matt Murdock.
Yeah, Matt Murdock.
Lawyer extraordinaire.
But, you know, that's all it is. It's a cameo, you know. And it was cool as shit, don't get me wrong, but, like, it got me hopeful to see a team up with Daredevil. And I'm sure they're
To be fair, Daredevil would get fucking waxed by the villains in this movie.
I don't know, man. I think he could go toe-to-toe with the Lizard.
With the Lizard, maybe. Yeah, Lizard he could.
Goblin.
No. He'd get waxed.
He could throw the bombs back at him. You know, don't underestimate Daredevil.
Yeah, Goblin.
He could, like, you know, always dodge the glider attacks. Because he'd hear it coming for sure. But, you know, I wouldn't say that was, like, you know, something wrong with the film. It was just, you know, if you had told me that that was, like, a reshoot and they just kind of added Daredevil into the movie, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
I mean, yeah, like, well, when it does pick off from Far From Home, right, when Peter's identity is revealed, and he's obviously framed for the death of Mysterio and planning to attack people, but the thing is he faces huge, basically legal troubles right in the beginning. Every one of them, they get arrested, they're interrogated by police. Seems like a big plot that should be spent a lot of time being developed, was just kind of over with and rushed because of who they throw out to basically solve all their problems. Because, well, you know, it's Matt Murdock, he's Daredevil.
Well,
he can fix it all.
I don't even think that it's because it's Daredevil, but you also have to consider, you know, this is doctored footage that they're dealing with first and foremost. A good forensics team will be able to look at that and realize it's doctored footage. You know, basically Matt Murdock waves his magic wand and is like, bibbidi bobbidi, no more legal issues.
It's so rushed.
It is, and they probably could have explained it out better. I think they wanted to at some point explain that, like, yeah, this is doctored footage. And just never got around to it, because without finding out that it's doctored footage, there's no way Peter would have gotten off that easily.
But they
don't explain it. They don't explain it. I'm saying you are right, and they should have.
Yeah. So I mean, that would probably take a lot of time if they have to investigate that.
Yeah, I'm forgiving of it because still, you know, the burden Peter is facing is the scrutiny of the world.
It just feels like it's introduced as like a kind of a big plot point, and then especially in how much Ned gives out, like we said earlier, like that's like
yeah, there's no way Ned would have gotten off.
Yeah,
no,
like,
none of
there's no fucking
how
way.
much he said, that's a warrant right there.
None of them would have gone home after that.
Yeah.
Ned would have fucked everybody out of their chance to go free.
Like I said, all nitpicky shit.
MJ would have probably literally killed Ned. I think one moment I really liked in the movie, like one scene in that sequence, is when Peter is talking to the investigator and he sees Ned, Aunt May, and MJ being brought in, and MJ and Aunt May both at the same time say, "Don't say anything without a lawyer present."
Oh yeah.
Good advice.
I thought that was like a really cute, like, make Peter be like, Jesus Christ, am I dating my own aunt moment?
Plead the fifth.
But yeah, it doesn't take long for Peter to want to wish his life away, essentially.
Yeah.
He reaches out to Doctor Strange to perform his memory spell. But yeah, that spell, Peter really didn't think that through at all.
No. He did that quite a few times, but
in all reality, Peter could have just said, "Can you make it so that, like, just right off the bat, can you make it so that everybody nobody who knew I was Spider-Man before Mysterio knows I'm Spider-Man."
It's also pretty funny because he gets the idea to like reach out to Doctor Strange because he visits MJ at work and he's feeling bad, you know, that she's and Ned are not getting into MIT, and he looks at a Halloween decoration. He's like, "Hey, that looks like Doctor Strange." The odds of him looking at that are so improbable, and like, you know, it's nothing wrong with the film. It's just kind of hilarious to think like, had he looked anywhere else, this movie wouldn't have fucking happened.
Just pure coincidence it was.
It's like, that one fucking Halloween decoration. If MJ had just taken it down like her boss said, she could have saved the multiverse from all the fuckery. Peter keeps interrupting the spell. It goes haywire. That's the justification you get for these villains from these timelines coming in. And at least they stick to the idea that they're really taken from a moment right before their full conclusion in said timeline. Doc Ock gets taken care of because he absorbs Peter's nanotech. Peter is able to hijack it, you know, control his limbs. And eventually, you know, it becomes this hunt, essentially, for these villains out of their timelines. And they get trapped in this quantum jail, essentially, by Doctor Strange. And Peter, you know, really wants to try and help them because of something Aunt May told him about using his gifts to help people. Because it's revealed by Doctor Strange that all of these villains are doomed to die by Spider-Man when they return to their timeline. And that kind of sends them into a state where they're kind of pleading him not to go back because, you know, they don't want to die by Spider-Man.
Still doesn't make any sense because Sandman didn't die.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know what his fate was in the Sam Raimi movies. They're kind of just answering that eventually, I guess, he crossed paths with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and dies.
Yeah, but the implication at the end of the movie is that he's, like, just done with villainy. I mean, I guess maybe not, because he does just kind of slink away.
He first appears, he helps Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like,
that was something I was worried about specifically, was like, how are they going to justify Sandman being a villain? And honestly, him being a villain against Peter Parker is not very strong in my opinion, but he's brought back, and the first thing he does is he helps Tom Holland's Peter Parker. And I'm like, I like that they take it that, you know, they're still allies.
Yeah.
But then it's revealed that he dies in his timeline.
Which was the closure that I didn't need because I liked the ending where he survives better.
Mm-hmm. So Peter takes the cube that Doctor Strange is holding the unstable spell in because he wants to save these villains that he wants to try and help. So they go on a pretty awesome action sequence. It's very trippy.
Through the mirror realm.
Yep.
And it was actually really cool. Like, it really was a moment where Peter got to showcase his intelligence because as he's going through it, he's realizing the exact geometric shape that the mirror realm is, and he's able to, you know, get his webs where they need to go, and eventually he's able to beat Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a great Peter Parker moment, as well as a Spider-Man moment.
Yeah, it is pretty fulfilling.
And it really shows his growth as like a superhero so far.
Absolutely, he learns, it shows his intelligence eye. And I would agree, yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, Peter wins, and
Yeah, Peter's able to thwart Strange, and he traps him in the mirror realm, which I assume is just torturous for someone like Doctor Strange without...
well, you have to think, you know, Peter also formulates his webs to dissolve after a while, so he probably got out of the mirror realm eventually.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you know it,
He takes all the superheroes back to Happy's condo where they're all staying so they can get some privacy from the media. Because Happy's got a fabricator in his condo,
which is gonna make all the baddies good. It's
yeah,
just, it's this box that like all it does is make everyone good again.
It's gonna, well, I mean, Tony's used the fabricator before. Like Peter used a fabricator at the end of in Far From Home.
I really like though that they're close to like curing everybody, but it's the Green Goblin who fucks it up.
Yeah. Yeah, Willem Dafoe. I mean, if you thought he was good in the original Spider-Man movie, you're gonna fucking love him in this movie.
Yeah, I'd say he kind of perfectly captures the Green Goblin.
His performance honestly outshines everybody, especially among the villains.
I even think it I think it outshines his previous
definite
adaptation of the character.
Definitely, like I said, if you like him there, you'll love him here. He does a great job with the character. He does, the kind of, especially with like kind of the dichotomy between Norman and the Goblin.
Mm-hmm. When Green Goblin was kind of hyping up the other villains, specifically Electro, to kind of break, whatever it was that he attached to himself to harness his electricity and revert him back to man. Mm-hmm. After that, he's like goes on like this preachy rant, and Sandman just kind of willingly succumbs to villainy and like turns on Peter. That was the moment that didn't work for me about those Rogue Gallery villains. That was the one villainy move that I was like, well, I didn't really like that.
Yeah.
It was too quick. It was too...
Right, like they went through the effort of having him come back as an ally, and what could have worked was, having it seem like he didn't want to keep trusting Peter Parker. He says that he didn't trust anybody, but, he's just kind of saying that. He still trusted Peter Parker, but the idea that, he is destined to die by Spider-Man could have played well into his turn to be a villain, but how it comes off in the movie, like, he just, like, hears Electro saying, like, I'm ready, to feel all this power, and it's time you should too, and he's like, well, fuck yeah. That's kind of how it came across to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I just think that change could have been handled better.
Yeah.
But, I mean, their motivations are fine. They're essentially no different than they were in their original timeline. And I'm glad...
Except Max isn't out there screaming about his birthday. All the villains kind of break loose in Happy's condo. And Spider-Man starts trying to fight him off. He did get Doc Ock cured. He replaced the inhibitor chip. Mm-hmm. Which, if you guys will remember from Spider-Man 2, got fried when he was doing the experiment with the fusion reactor. So Peter replaced the inhibitor chip, and Otto Octavius had full control of his arms again. As well as his own mind. And then when all the villains escape, Electro says, I liked you better the other way, blasts him with electricity and sends him flying out of the building. And a huge fight ensues. And as they're fighting their way through the building, for all intents and purposes, the villains win. Peter is on the ground floor trying to fight Goblin. He's got the shit kicked out of him, and they're in the lobby of the building, and Aunt May tries to sneak up on the Goblin to inject him, and it doesn't work. And he brings his glider in, and the glider gets Aunt May, and she's up for a little while, but then Aunt May ends up dying.
That moment, was it earned?
I think it was in the context of this film, but I do wish we'd gotten to see more out of Marissa Tomei's character as Aunt May.
Give her more development. Flesh her out a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think we should kind of learn gets to know more about her other than she's having a breakup with Hogan or Fling or whatever.
He's in denial that she just wanted a one-night stand. That's kind of how it came across to me. There's like implied that there's an actual connection between Happy and Aunt May, but I didn't buy that. I could see it either way. I mean, there is enough to suggest that she really felt something for him, but like to me, it seemed like Happy was just reading way more into what she was wanting.
Yeah.
Which even that still works for the movie's narrative just fine, in the context of what's going on.
But we're digressing here.
Yeah. Do you think it was earned? Her death?
Yeah, in a way. And it's because of a later moment in the film, which we'll get to. But
personally, I actually thought it was a really good idea to do that with Aunt May.
To give Peter a chance to go to that darker side. Yeah.
It is a situation we have not seen Peter Parker put in.
The closest we got would be the beginning of Spider-Man 1, kind of the first act finale there.
Exactly, and we haven't seen Aunt May die in a movie, That was always something as a kid. We were never like, man, Aunt May has plot armor, she's safe, Here,
the rug kind of gets ripped out from under us, and it's...
I like that they kind of have set this Spider-Man world up as basically an Elseworld universe. The origins are a little different for some of these characters, but, I think it works really well in that regard.
And we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. But yeah, it's a very dark point. It's something that we don't get to see the dark side of Peter's character in film that much.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get to see Peter go to that really dark part of his psyche that he can go to in the comics.
Right. Something Sam Raimi really wanted to, or not necessarily Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire specifically in Spider-Man 3, he really wanted to push for like a really dark thing, but he was held back.
Yeah.
Interference.
Yeah, so I'm glad we get to see Peter Parker in just this angry, vengeful state. And as a child, man, it's brutal. And I think Tom Holland sells it very well.
So, Happy arrives and, tells Peter to run, sees that he's holding Aunt May and that she's, obviously dead, and tells him to run, and Peter does, and
he's pretty much handcuffed, taken away.
Yeah, Happy is, yep.
It leads into Ned and MJ being able to open a portal. Well, it's really just Ned, but they're there. To both the entrant, or...
Yeah, like Peter got Doctor Strange's ring, so he gave it to Ned in the fight.
Ned opens a portal, and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man pops in. And,
Yep.
it was a good reveal. He takes his mask off.
Yeah, it was actually a pretty solid reveal. When we were discussing this earlier, I was talking about it, and I said, at first, I wasn't sure. I was like, that could be Tom Holland, trying to, run away. But then he did like this goofy little and I was like,
as soon as the portal opened up, I'm like, hey, that's Andrew fucking Garfield right there.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad that he got another chance to be Spider-Man. Cause,
Yeah.
He's having so much fun here, and it's really
he's having the time of his life.
Yeah. I hope he gets to be Spider-Man again in, like, a really good Spider-Man movie, because I think my favorite just characterization moment is in the first Amazing Spider-Man film. But
with the thief.
No, with the little kid that he tells to put the mask on. It's my favorite Spider-Man just heart-to-heart moment or whatever.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate that the MCU is pushing something darker with Peter. You know?
Gives me hope that when it eventually gives way to Miles Morales, we will maybe get that Moreland story I've been wanting.
That'd be very satisfying.
That would be so good. Like, to have, you know, Moreland kill Peter, and then... Like, that's the ultimate passing the torch moment right now, right there, is to have Miles defeat the guy that killed Peter.
Yeah.
And who better than the Spider Hunter Moreland? Like, that is, the stakes are so high there.
How'd you feel about the Toby reveal?
Oh,
It was like so classically Toby.
I like that he just steps in waves. It was a good, you know.
Hold on.
Gentlemen?
Go put your headset on.
Yes, mother.
So yeah, anyway, it just cuts to, you know, Ned opening portals to try and find the right Peter, and then after 2 tries, they're just sitting there talking with both Peters, and they're like, you know, where would be his place to go when he needs some time alone? And they find him, and big emotional moment, and Peter meets the other Spider-Men, or Peter meets Peter.
Yeah, like all that, you know, of course people are gonna go nuts for all that. As just a Spider-Man fan, it's good to see that shit.
But yeah, there was a really good, you know, kind of like Spider-Man exchange right there, and it kind of like there's a lot of like explaining what they've been up to since their own films ended, and what I really liked was, you know, how they all went into like their big tragedy in their lives, and Andrew Garfield specifically mentions, you know, I lost Gwen, and that's when he is talking about, you know, in you know, what he's been up to since then, that he's been a very brutal Spider-Man. He says, you know, I stopped pulling my punches, and you know, this really is a very dark take on Spider-Man in several different fronts. You know,
I think it's a good setup for something at the end, though. Despite my mixed feelings on it, I'll get back to that.
No, the moment I know what you're referring to. The moment itself is good, even if it's executed, even if some of the execution kind of goes off wrong.
Mm-hmm. But no, I fully agree. Even though I think, you know, the timelines of the Andrew Garfield movies don't have like good writing, his character, you know, means a lot to people.
Because he was so passionate about it.
Right.
And he was just so dejected after having to do that.
I think what helps is both of them just feel like they're handled with so much respect and love.
Mm-hmm. Like, they are both.
I was so worried.
They're both just so happy to be back.
Yeah, they are. And it was so happy for me to see that.
Like, they are, like, you know, that video that's been going around about Alfred Molina joking that he's just in it for the pay.
Happy to pay the bills, Otto.
I doubt that. He loves that role. You know, same as, you know, Andrew and Toby. You know, yeah, the money was probably a big deal to them, and especially their agents.
I was worried that they were just going to get thrown into the movie because, you know, Marvel couldn't trust Tom Holland to just be Spider-Man.
That was not the case at all. Tom Holland emotionally carries this film on his fucking back like Atlas.
Like, they would have assumed that they needed both of those Spider-Men to pass him the torch, and no, it's not like that at all. It's great showcasing of who Peter Parker is. You know, he's Peter Parker that's going to help everyone, including himself.
Yeah.
He's his own big brother, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, they 3 team up and take on the remaining villains.
Build all the tools they need to, you know, kind of cure them of their powers.
Right, and there's a cute little gag where, you know, they do the fucking finger pointing meme to each other. I don't know if people got that though.
I didn't notice it. I don't think.
Really, I thought it was super obvious. They were like, they weren't in costume, but like, you know, they were like pointing at each other, you know, making that triangle shape.
Oh yeah, when Ned was saying Peter and all that.
Yeah, Peter.
Oh,
Yeah.
in the lab.
Yeah, that was totally like the meme. You know, there's like fan servicey stuff like that, and I think the movie's aware that like they have these characters, and this is like the only opportunity.
It's definitely like meme service, like having Sonic in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, which I thought was a great little nugget.
Sure, yeah. There's a lot of those fan servicey moments. A lot of them, they're like it's like the movie's aware that like this is the only time that they're gonna have like these three characters together, or you know, at least is currently the case.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you know, they have to kind of make every kind of, you know, banner potential about, you know, stuff from each of their timelines and how silly it is and stuff.
Yeah.
I could see that, you know, being a bit much. It didn't like the movie for me. But you know, I'd say at points it goes a little far.
I did like when they were like talking about web shooters. Like as like there was no way that like this movie would have passed if they didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
No, their bonding was great throughout the
Yeah.
movie. I mean, especially the emotional moments, the funny moments, and you said it touched upon who Peter Parker is.
This was a really great like character exploration of Tom Holland's Peter Parker.
I agree. And it's really emotional how they all connect over their loss. You know, I just think that's you know, if of anyone that understands loss in comic books, there's Batman and there's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Those are the two that like that's all they know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that like, you know, that's the initial thing that, you know, gets Tom Holland's Spider-Man trusting of these two.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, you know, they're the ones who are responsible for their loved ones dying too.
Yeah.
So they team up and they take on the villains, and it's very entertaining. They're able to kind of show how Tom Holland's Spider-Man is like skillful to them. You know, he's the one that's worked alongside the Avengers, so he can kind of coordinate.
Yeah, and I did like that. I did like that bit they had where Peter was like, "Look, I'm not trying to brag here, but I did work with the Avengers," and they were just like, "Who?" Like Andrew Garfield was like, "Is that a band? Are you in a band?"
I thought that line was fucking dumb.
Yes.
But the bit as a whole was good.
It is goofy, yeah.
So yeah, they're taking on the villains, and you know, of course they're struggling at first, and then Peter calls them all in, and he's like, "Okay, I've actually worked with a team before, so just follow my lead." And they figure it out, and there's some really this is where I think a lot of the better combat scenes are in the film. I think they're just really cool. You know, 3 Spider-Men moments. You know, they start picking off the villains one by one. You know, eventually, you know, it's down to, you know, Electro and Lizard, and Doc Ock, you know, comes in and saves them both from Electro. And then Lizard, who has seen MJ and Ned, who couldn't close their portal and get back out, you know, he's chasing them, so they start going after him, and they stick him with the cure, and that's about when Ned, trying to open a portal, brings Doctor Strange back. And Doctor Strange...
Or is it? Wink, wink.
Yeah, there's... We'll get to that. And, you know, he realizes that, you know, Peter's plan worked and he could save these people because, you know, all this time they're chasing a box that basically has a kill switch for all the villains. It would send them all back to their timelines exactly to when they would die. It gets to a point where, you know, they've got everyone saved, and Doctor Strange is about to hit the kill switch on the box, and then in comes the Goblin. But we should backpedal because before that,
When does MJ fall?
I think is it during the sequence? It's during the sequence with Reptile.
Lizard.
Yeah, Lizard. Yeah, Reptile's the Mortal Kombat character. But yeah, it goes back to the scene with Lizard, I think, because MJ knocks Lizard, or Lizard knocks MJ off of the scaffolding, and she starts to fall, and this was the Goblin sequence, because
Tom
Holland goes down to save her, and then Goblin hits him with the glider and carries him off. So Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man goes down there, and the execution of the actual effects of it was a little wonky, but it was a really good moment because, it was kind of like it was kind of his moment to redeem himself for not being able to save Gwen, and it was actually a really great character moment for Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker.
It helps how he portrays it too. He really sells that moment. He's fucking bawling his eyes out.
That's not even just. I think that was Andrew Garfield genuinely welling up that this is what Spider-Man actually deserves.
Right.
This is what I always wanted to give for Spider-Man, and I think that's genuine. Yes, obvious. I think Andrew Garfield is genuinely welling up with tears there because he's genuinely happy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much of that was him acting.
It culminates into, a moment where Tom Holland's Peter Parker is, squared off 1-to-1 with Willem Dafoe. And, he's just kind of laying the fucking smackdown on him. And that's, in my opinion, just the best scene in the movie. There's just so much raw anger and emotion you feel from Tom Holland as he's just bludgeoning the Green Goblin to near death, basically.
He sells it, but...
And, meanwhile, the Green Goblin's just taunting him the whole time, and he picks up the glider and he's about to,
about to stab the
he's
Goblin
about to
with the
fucking
glider.
pierce the Goblin with the glider, and Tobey Maguire steps in and, holds it and pleads with him to stop, and it's great shit,
But then, while holding it, Tobey Maguire takes a stab right from the Green Goblin, and he goes down.
Yeah.
For about a minute.
Yeah, it's not executed well. He's like, I've been stabbed before, but to be fair, it's something the Green Goblin would take advantage of right there. But it just.
But yeah, but then Green Goblin gets.
It was just a little undercut, I'd say. That's the one time I'd say a little joke was undercut for the drama.
Yeah, but then the Green Goblin gets stuck with his cure, and everyone's fixed.
Mm-hmm. And I like that they show Peter Parker about to cross the line. He normally doesn't cross. And yet he manages to let everyone be spared. Even Green Goblin, who killed Aunt May.
And it's because another Spider-Man who knows what he's been through said, no, you're not going to feel better if you kill him because I did it.
Revenge is not the answer. That's the lesson.
Mm-hmm. The spell that Doctor Strange performs to send everyone back.
Yeah, because he has to cast kind of like an emergency spell. Because the original spell got released when the Goblin attacked.
I promise it's a lot better structured than how we're making it out.
Yeah,
we are scatterbrained as fuck.
Yeah.
Basically, what he's performing is like a mind wipe spell throughout the multiverse.
Yeah,
so everyone in the multiverse who knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, or that Peter Parker existed.
This specific Peter Parker was Spider-Man.
Exactly.
Or that this specific Peter Parker existed, yeah.
The MCU Spider-Man, yeah, he's just wiped from the memories of everyone in the multiverse. But it's a little unclear as to what exactly happens there. because it's implied that what happens is everyone's memory is wiped, but the past is intact. You know, like everything that's happened already happened. It's just in the present day, their memories are wiped. It's as if he never existed. It didn't rewrite history to say that. So like all the footage of like Mysterio, you know, saying, you know, Spider-Man is Peter Parker, does all that still exist?
I think maybe the footage still exists, but it's been changed so that it doesn't reveal that Spider-Man is Peter Parker.
Like I said, yeah, it's left a little unclear, you know, and it's an area where I'm sure they'll fill it in.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, some content. But it's just, I noticed that. I was like, you know, did Doctor Strange really rewrite history? Was that really Doctor Strange? Wink, wink. It's a very interesting piece that they end this Peter Parker on. You know, he's kind of just been through hell this whole movie.
Well, and I think, so, going back to this TikTok I saw about a week ago, it was basically talking about how, you know, the analysis that Peter Parker always needs help is kind of dumb because when the chips are down, Peter Parker only really has himself in the MCU. You know, when the chips are down against Vulture, all Peter has is himself in his homemade suit. When the chips are down against Mysterio, all Peter has is himself, really, because Happy ends up not being able to do much of anything after he gets his suit made. And then in this film, when the chips are down, Peter finally has help. And he still ends up going back to having nothing.
Yeah, like his whole life, you know, nobody knows who he is. You know, he literally is a nobody now, which I think is just the perfect response to the criticisms his character has faced thus far. That he's not the neighborhood Spider-Man we've seen.
This definitely served as like a soft reboot, which is interesting, considering how much we were all kind of expecting Spider-Man to be the new face of the MCU.
I like that, yeah, I kind of like that they went in the angle that, you know, he aspired to be an Avenger, and then once he became an Avenger, he just wanted to be a neighborhood Spider-Man. I think that's just the perfect story arc for a kid Spider-Man.
Yeah. God, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I gotta say, as far as MCU characters go, I'd say Spider-Man is right there with Iron Man as far as just my favorite just journey to follow so far.
Yeah.
Iron Man. Like Iron Man 2, 3.
Well, just Tony Stark's overall
Or
arc.
just Tony Stark's, because that includes...
Beyond them, yes.
So, in the Avengers and Civil War.
Yeah, the total overall arc of the hero.
Yeah, because, like, you know, it's very subtle changes in his character that you see throughout the movies, but, you know, like in Iron Man 3, he fucking lands himself in this, you know, very snow, you know, cold-ass place. And, you know, what does he do for Peter Parker? He installs a heater in his suit when he's underwater and he's freezing. Yeah. There's just little things like that peppered throughout, like, the whole MCU that you see his journey go through, and it's great, you know, in my opinion. I like that we see it more consistently in a movie trilogy rather than spread out through a whole, you know, 24 film saga.
So, do you think that Tom Holland's Spider-Man will ever cross paths with the Avengers or other heroes again?
Definitely, yeah. They won't pass that up, but, you know, I'm liking the idea that maybe he's going to stick to the ground for a while. I like the idea that Ned and MJ have, like, you know, this history without Peter, you know, because I can see that building a triangle you know.
I'm very interested, because, like, if the Fantastic Four are handling a crime in New York, how is Spider-Man not just going to show up, you know?
Well, that's the thing. Spider-Man could, you know, Spider-Man, you know, has been with the Fantastic Four in the original run.
Exactly, and for it, like, Spider-Man would almost kind of have to. If it's happening in New York, he'd be like, what the fuck?
I think that could work pretty well. You know, it's just they have to introduce the Fantastic Four well. Which, good luck.
It's the MCU. I mean, they can do it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not worried about Kevin Feige finding a way to introduce the Fantastic Four.
I want my Four-stick multiverse film.
No, you don't.
That was
Do you really want to see Miles Teller as Reed Richards again?
If he like feels as passionately for the role, which he doesn't, as Andrew Garfield does for Spider-Man, I would. Yeah.
Would you want to see Kate Mara as Sue Storm again?
No.
Would you want to see whoever played Ben Grimm as Ben Grimm again?
Jamie Foxx.
Jamie
Not
Bell.
Jamie Foxx.
What the fuck?
No, Jamie was just doing really good white face. With Four-stick.
Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm again could work though. With better writing.
That's a timeline that I think it'd be hilarious if they just went with the idea that Deadpool just destroyed it.
It's just, you don't even want to bring them back. Just.
I think that's the best way they should introduce the X-Men for the MCU. They should just do like a Deadpool destroys the X-Men universe thing. And he just, at the very end, just hops to the next timeline to do the same for the MCU.
And then he just realizes that he likes the MCU heroes and doesn't want to kill
He
them.
realizes that he's stuck by writers by Disney and he will never be able to. I think that would be pretty cool. There's no Deadpool in this movie. I thought Rob Liefeld had spoiled something for me, but nah, we're good. I was about to be very mad at him and mad at myself for being mad at him because dude's awesome. But yeah, it's just we see like truly a Peter Parker that is a nobody, and the potential for this triangle dynamic with Ned, MJ, and Peter, which would set Ned up to be a villain, which I'm certain that they're doing.
Ned's gonna be a villain?
Yeah, man, I think he's gonna be like a hobgoblin. Or, I think what the MCU is gonna do is make him like a sorcerer. But he's
So
gonna
you were saying earlier, you think Nick Fury's gonna remember who Spider-Man is?
They're gonna do some shit with Nick Fury that like he like foresaw this happening, and he's like, I implanted this backup.
Maybe while he's out there with the Skrulls, they
have a force field of spells. It's like
Something
no
like
spells
that.
work in the outer reaches of space.
I mean, isn't that something the Skrulls could do?
I don't know. I can't say that I do. No, it ends Peter on a cool note, I think.
It's up there with one of my favorite not a happy endings.
Well, I think it is a happy ending. That's where I disagree with you. Like, this is the first feeling of peace that Peter has felt. He goes to approach MJ to tell her that, like, he loves her.
It's a very bittersweet ending.
It's very bittersweet, but in that Spider-Man 3 kind of way, where it's a happy ending. You see the hope,
It's finally over,
Like, everything, besides Aunt May, which, he knows he's not alone. He's never alone. He always has Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Every bit of danger that his friends were initially in, is no more, I like that, he kind of feels very relieved to let them live oblivious at the end. I
Feels
assume
almost vindicated.
Right. I assume that'll change.
No, he's going to tell them eventually. It's all gonna work back out.
Yeah, and I mean that's the end of the movie. There's a mid-credit scene which I didn't particularly like, but it's
there.
It's there. Tom Hardy's Venom's just fucking around at a bar in Mexico and
just getting fucking blasted.
Venom fans will get a kick out of that. It doesn't make any sense why he's in this movie. I haven't seen Venom 2, so if there's any Spider-Man connection, this will be outdated as soon as I post it, but at least from what I've seen, Peter Parker doesn't exist in the Venomverse, or it's very unclear if he does. So for Venom to exist in this movie, it requires him to have known Peter Parker, is Spider-Man. Because he gets sent back to his universe because of the final spell that Doctor Strange casts.
What if it's like some tomfuckery that, like, it pulled that Eddie Brock instead of, like, the Raimi verse Eddie Brock because Topher Grace didn't want to come back or something?
Like, you think it could have just been, like, canonically the Raimi Venom and they just recast him?
Not even that, just
as Tom Hardy to
not
really fuck with people.
I don't know. Not even that. I feel like it would have been really funny if they were like, if like Venom had been like, well, another symbiote knew a Peter Parker, but that wasn't me.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense why he's there, unless they establish that a Peter Parker exists, that Eddie knows Peter Parker, and that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and maybe that Eddie knows that. It's just some homework they have to do for it to be okay. They leave a little piece of symbiote, though, so here comes Venom. It's just, do you think they'll recast him for the MCU?
What if they do Ned being Venom?
I would fuck with that. That makes sense. It's in Mexico. He might have family there that he visits or some shit.
Yeah.
That could be cool.
Oh, Ned as Venom?
Well, as like a symbiote.
Oh, it's just, as a symbiote, I guess. I mean,
I could see that.
But they'd have to do the Tom Holland becoming, like, having the symbiote suit too. They'd have to attach to him first. And then...
Yeah, and I think Tom Holland, like, has so much potential for a black suit Spider-Man. We've gotten a taste of him, just at the cusp of killing somebody.
See, that is the kind of Spider-Man that would beat Wilson Fisk within an inch of his life at jail and then not kill him.
Exactly. I hope if that's what they intend on doing, I really hope they commit to that. If an R rating is required to show a brutal Spider-Man like that, fucking go for it. It'll make money. People are committed to these characters. If
theaters are gonna have to be very diligent about making sure they say this is an R-rated Spider-Man film. Make sure you know that.
It doesn't have to be super gory. It doesn't have to
I mean, there was really no blood in this movie.
It doesn't have to have all the profanities in the world. It can be a little more visceral. It can be a little more unsettling in premise. I think audiences are ready for that. I think the Venom franchise really missed out, especially with Carnage showing just this visceral and hyper-violent, comic book character in like a setting where he would have the freedom to be expressed to his fullest.
He's butchered. He's just absolutely butchered. But I haven't really seen the movie, so... But I can't imagine how...
Yeah, try not to take what I have against the franchise of Venom as, like, matter of fact, my feelings on Venom 2, just as a film. It's just the vision I don't really support. I acknowledge it can be a well-made film on its own, and, I'll see it someday and make my own assessment on its own quality. It's just, it was a vision I couldn't support. And I've had some stuff spoiled, unfortunately, and it just kind of sounds exactly what I feared it would be.
Yeah.
Again, I could very well be wrong, but, I just feel like it was a little missed opportunity. But, yeah, I hope to see Black Suit Spider-Man.
Should we deep dive into what happened after the credits, or just be like, hey, this happened?
Yeah, I mean, there's a post-credits trailer. You know, it's not really a post-credit scene. It's a full teaser trailer. The Doctor Strange into the Madness in the Multiverse. Madness of the Multiverse, I think.
It reveals Mephisto.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, Mephisto.
You can already tell from the trailer this is a Sam Raimi directed film.
Yeah, it's got a lot of horror vibes to it. There's no doubt in my mind, given that Tobey Maguire is back, that they're not going to do something with his universe.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
He's gonna make a big reappearance in some way, or
even if it's not necessarily him, there's going to be aspects about his timeline, like in Morbius, that it might be mentioned. Because there's a Spider-Man poster where it's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and it says murder on it. Like, nobody's certain which timeline Morbius is set in. That's kind of what the marketing is really playing off of, and I think they're doing a good job at, you know, drawing
Morbius
interest.
isn't set in the MCU, right?
I don't think so. It's you know, a Sony movie like Venom was. It's like a solo.
But I mean, these were technically Sony movies too.
Well, these were in collaboration with Marvel Studios.
Yeah.
Directly. Venom
Venom's
and
kind of its own
The
thing.
Amazing Spider-Man and Morbius wasn't. But now they're establishing that all of these multiverse characters exist. So it's only a matter of time before we get a Fant Four-Stick crossover with a 1990s Turkish Captain America.
You think they're really gonna go that deep for it?
They might as well.
You think we're gonna get a Marvel Star Wars crossover eventually?
They've, you know, made Howard the Duck canon, so why not?
The Avengers go to
2005
Tatooine.
Fantastic Four. And
No,
we
that
can-
one's off limits. The 2005.
But we can
thing.
have Chris Evans as Human Torch and Chris Evans as Captain America, and then
I'm pretty sure he never wants to play a comic book role again.
Could you blame him?
I think he had a good run. Chris Evans, I'll always see. You know, Steve Trevor, Chris Evans.
Steve Rogers.
Steve Rogers. Steve.
I'm an
Trevor
idiot.
was-
Yeah. When I think of Steve Rogers, I always think of Chris Evans as Captain America. Steve Rogers. I wouldn't say it's like that perfect kind of casting like Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, but it's like a really, really good casting.
Yeah.
He earned that role.
Oh yeah.
Any other thoughts on No Way Home, guys?
Nah, I think that's all.
It was fun talking about it with y'all.
Yeah.
It was a fun movie. It was a fun experience.
It's damn good. I am very, very, very pleased with it. It had a lot of expectations.
It did, and there was fortunately a lot of stuff spoiled. It may have been better without, you know, all the people throwing spoilers and rumors out there, but
Yeah, that's the thing. Nothing was technically spoiled, but you know, all the speculation in the world kind of just made it like you knew what to expect. You know,
Yeah,
as it was unfolding.
it was just too much. It blew up. Like, I mean,
You could see that like this movie would have melted minds otherwise if this had no trailer to it at all, and like none of the rumors came out about like what kind of movie it was. This
Yeah.
would have been like super, super insane.
Nobody, yeah.
But yeah, just maybe without.
I'm surprised at how tough it, like how much the Marvel camp struggled to keep this under wraps, because they're usually pretty good at keeping things under wraps.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that Twitter, especially Spider-Man film side, they're all about like reading plot leaks and, you know, spoilers, listening to soundtracks early, which I'm very glad I did not do, because there's callbacks to the Danny Elfman score, and that alone would have been like, yeah, so they're definitely bringing back Tobey Maguire. That was a good reveal for the movie. I'm disappointed that they released the soundtrack early.
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to Marvel Studios and Sony for, you know, this hype machine film, but I think the marketing could have been a little better. the first trailer just exploded with interest, and I think that's all I needed.
It wasn't like your standard formulaic Marvel movie either.
Right, yeah. This one had a lot of layers to it. Every direction, went somewhere. That's why I take a little issue, not like a lot at all to really matter, but where the movie kind of dawdles is like, near the climax, the three Spider-Men are having their banter, while shit's going down, or about to go down, and, there's things like that, you just, it kind of reminds you that, yeah, you're watching a Marvel movie.
Yeah. But it's still one of the, for lack of a better word, more thoughtful Marvel movies.
Yeah, I'm glad that they were aware of all the uphill things that it had to face as far as its story, premise, villain motivations, and everything. Because one of the things I was real worried about was, a lot of these villains have pretty weak backstories, when you look at just how they were brought up in their movies. And the movie, was very self-aware of that. It didn't shy away from insulting, some of the dumb shit that goes down.
Yeah.
And that's always fun. But yeah, I'm glad y'all stuck around this long and watched. It's been a blast.
We spent a lot more time filming this than I thought we would.
Well, yeah, there was a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any final thoughts, man?
I wish Topher Grace was in it.
No, I don't.
I wish, I think it could have been him, at the bar, and,
There's a little shot, when Doctor Strange is doing the final spell, or Mephisto. Because it ends... The reason why I don't know if it's Doctor Strange, I forgot to talk about this. Peter traps him in the mirror dimension. And when he's brought back, he's in a completely new area. And so it wouldn't surprise me if maybe the spell he cast was a ruse. It truly wrote his history out of existence, and he literally rewrote the past.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I think could be interesting. But, who knows? Who knows?
We'll just have to see.
I'm anticipating a lot. What's in store for the MCU?
What's in store for Peter Parker? Mm-hmm. All three of them.
Oh, yeah.
I just, it's interesting now, seeing, okay, yeah, Marvel is setting up something very big. Meanwhile, DC has no idea what it wants to do.
Well, what about the Flash?
I know you were saying that if this movie wasn't what you hoped it would be, it would turn you off from the MCU. Are you still turned on to the MCU?
It was definitely a movie that, it was where I was hoping it would at least be, as far as just its quality. My thing was, if this movie was disappointing, if it really was just not well made, it was like Black Widow, where it was just clearly a cash grab product, I would be just done with the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're no longer in the MCU, guys. I assumed by WandaVision, that was the case, but...
We haven't seen WandaVision yet, so we're not going to talk about it.
Well, I assume it involves the multiverse.
We should watch it and find out.
Disney Plus.
I've told him he can come over and watch it whenever he wants,
Whenever I want.
as long as I'm awake.
That's the thing. You're not. But yeah, I think we'll go ahead and bring this girthy video to a close. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoy, this, engaging discussion. Sound off below what you thought of the movie, what you would rank it amongst just Marvel movies in general.
It's probably not up there with above Spider-Man 2, but pretty close. But I wanted to rewatch Homecoming again before I make that final decision. But I don't know, I say I like this more than Far From Home.
Yeah, I did like this more than Far From Home.
It was a great film.
So, thank you so much. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time. Adios.
Look closely at Tobey Maguire's dick.